So, Ivan, thank you very much for making this possible. Interesting. Well, you have and you had already many expressive positions in your life. Uh, like inside from your family, you are an engineer, uh, and you also were a dancer, and now you are a full-time musician. Please tell me how you became a full-time musician and composer and not an engineer or ballet dancer.
Well, first, thank you for inviting me for the interview. It's a pleasure. This is a long story, and I think I have to begin with the childhood. When I was 6 or 7 years old, my grandmother took me to the music school, and it all started there, and also at the same time to the dance school. And I also started to dance. I've danced for 7 years. I danced folk dances, ballet, a little bit of step dance. Yeah, but what I heard from teachers, they told me you have to justify your last name, Baryshnikov. You have to be a dancer, make it a profession, and so on. But at one moment I told them that yeah, it's enough. I don't want to copy anybody, and I chose music. So, as I told, I was doing music for 7 years at that moment already. So I was 14 years when I quit dancing. And it all started with the music school. My grandmother, her name was Любовь. It means love in Russian. She took me to the music school, and I started with a recorder, a small flute. Then at the age of 10 I switched to the alto saxophone, and I continued playing alto saxophone until I was 15. And still at that moment everybody in the family wanted me to be an engineer as a main profession and keep music as a hobby. But then one time I visited the college, the music college. They have an open day. And I heard a jazz quintet playing. And I was, my mind was blown, you know. I thought that was super unusual to see how these young musicians, well, young, they were 18, I think, how they acted professionally on stage. And that was a turning moment, I think. I thought, no, I'm not gonna be an engineer, I'm gonna be a musician. And yeah, I think my parents first were very, not disappointed, but they were afraid for my future, I think. Yeah, that's a long story, and I tried to put it short.
Okay, well, I want to tell you a quote from Mikhail Baryshnikov,
Yeah.
the big dancer.
Yeah.
He said once, the essence of all art is to have pleasure in giving pleasure.
Yeah.
How is this for you?
I think he's absolutely right. I understood it pretty lately. I think a couple of years ago, that I do music for the audience, not for myself. And that's a real pleasure of the artist, I think. To do music, to share the music, and by that making other people happy or maybe sad, but to trigger emotions and feelings. inside the person. And that's what Tim Armacost told me. The purpose of the musician is to bring feelings into the physical world. So, yeah, I'm trying to follow now that statement.
Okay. Well, you were born in Russia, in Moscow. You come from Moscow.
Yeah, that's right.
Can you please tell me what you like about your Russian roots, the life in Moscow, and maybe what you don't like so much about that?
Well, first of all, what I like about the city of Moscow is how it looks in the night, especially. My favorite thing was to jump in the car and drive through the night and see all this light, and at some point reach observation deck, Воробьёвы горы. That means Sparrow Hills in Russian. And to see all the beautiful panorama of Moscow. That's especially what I like about how the city looks like. And of course, I love people with whom I shared moments of my life. And yeah, I grew up in Moscow. I was born in Moscow, I grew up in Moscow. I spent 25 years in Moscow, so this is really something special for me. I love this city, and no matter where I am, I really miss something special about this city. What I don't like, I cannot really name some certain things that I don't like. But maybe the reason why I decided to move somewhere was to experience something new, to meet new people, new music, new artists, and that was the main purpose why I left Moscow. Yeah, to receive different kind of education, to see how it is to study in Europe and United States. So yeah, that was the reason, I think.
Okay. Well, as a dancer and as a musician, you have to know all about timing, the right timing especially. How does your route with dance help you today in music?
It's a good question. I think the main thing about dancing is it taught me that every piece of music is a certain movement of the body. Even if it is a silence, still there is a certain slow movement. And I think this relation helped me to understand how to operate with these small pieces of music and how to set them in time together. That's the main thing, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, later when I collaborated with dancers and I wrote music for the dancers, it helped me to understand how my music can affect the dance. And of course it was much easier for me to understand it because I had this experience of dancing, and I danced different kind of dances, and that also helped me to understand it.
Can you explain a little bit more about how it helped you and how it looks inside a dance structure and a music structure? We talked earlier about the counting, when to start, where exactly. Of course, we don't see that, but it's happening inside of you as a dancer and as a musician. Can you explain that a little bit?
It's really hard to explain, especially when you learned about it when you was a little kid. I'll try to explain what I feel about that. There is a meter in music, and let's say there are different kinds of elements in music. The main elements are rhythm, harmony and melody, and I think each element can affect the dancer on a different level, let's say. For example, rhythm is how the dancer can move, how fast he can move. The harmony helps to understand with what emotion the dancer can move. And the melody can help to finish small elements like the movement of the head or arms. Yeah, that's how I'm trying to think about it.
Okay.
I think that makes sense.
Good. Well, you studied as a master student at the Prins Claus Conservatorium here in Groningen, in the Netherlands. How was it for you to start here being in the Netherlands? And how did you get here and not to Amsterdam? Kind of a logical idea would be when you come from a big city also to move to a bigger city. Then I also want to know, did you have important teachers here, and who were they and why they were important for you, and what did you learn here the most? What really gave you something special you didn't have before? And what did you maybe hate during learning the most?
That's a nice question. It covers really a big part of my life and a big part of my changing inside. Because the last 3 years already changed me really a lot. So first, why I chose Groningen, not Amsterdam. Let me start with this little bit of introduction. I visited Amsterdam in 2013 and 2014 as a participant of summer jazz workshop in the conservatory in Amsterdam. It was held by them and by Manhattan School of Music. So that was first moment when I realized, okay, I have a really great education in Russia, but this is something new, something from the other side. So in 2015 I decided to apply because I already finished my school in Moscow. I studied in Gnesin's Russian Academy of Music. And I applied in Amsterdam and also in Groningen. Why Groningen? They have this special program when every week a new teacher from New York comes and teaches. So every week you have a new insight. Every week you have a new opinion on how you study, how you practice, how you write music, how you play. Everybody can say something new from the experience. And also one semester in New York City was also very attractive. To go there, to have this field experience, and then go back and finish studies. So it was very attractive for me. I decided, okay, I'd better go to a smaller city and then have this really special experience. That was a decision factor, let's say. Then what I learned in Groningen, or special moments of teachers, well, as I said, it was a different kind of side on the same subject. It's like the coin. You see one side, and one day you turn it, and you see the other side. In matters of education, I was really free in what I can do. For example, I want to compose, okay, I can compose. I want to perform this kind of style, okay. Here are books and recordings, and you can play this kind of style. It was a little bit different from what I had in Russia, because the main method of teaching is to give as much information as a teacher could give you, and you have to learn everything. There's no time to even sleep good. You know, when I studied in Moscow, I had classes, and then I was practicing my instrument for 5-6 hours a day. And then I had performances, so I had no time for personal life or hobbies or something like that. And I'm really grateful for that. But then, when I moved to the Netherlands and started to study here, I realized that now I'm free to use all this information as I wanted to use. And that was, I think, the main special thing that I've got here. Free to choose and do what I really want to do. And I'm really thankful for that. And of course, New York City. Field experience, booking lessons that I want to book, playing concerts, working on my project, and yeah, it was real professional experience there.
Yeah.
So I don't regret it all.
Yeah. Can you also tell me a little bit about teachers you met here that really were special for you and what they gave to you, like mentors maybe?
I want to name every teacher, but I think main teachers were Moore, my saxophone teacher. Completely different approach, as I said. Everything that I said before applies to every teacher, I think. Steve Altenberg. With him, I had lots of psychological work inside my brain, let's say. The new understanding of what is music, how to be a musician, what it is in reality. Paul Berner. He was my mentor for 2 years, and not only mentor for studies, but also mentor for my life. I want to add that during my studies I also became a father. So not only in my professional life but also in my personal life. I had huge changes. And he also helped me and guided me and shared his advice on this part of my life. And New York teachers, I think Tim Armacost was the most influential for me, and many others. I had many teachers. I want to mention Guillermo Klein. He's a composer, and I took composition lessons with him in New York City. It was completely mind-blowing. When I had the first lesson with him, I went out of the classroom and I was just smiling like an idiot. I called my wife and told her that this person changed my life, and it was it was crazy for me. Some essential things. He could explain me really difficult things as simple as nature, for example. There is a sun, there is a tree, there is water, and I was like, wow, it is really not as complex as many other people think about music when they compose, when they play music. It was really something special for me. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, very nice, thank you. Well, now you are waiting for the right time to move to New York. You're still in Groningen. How was your first visit in New York? You told me you went to a concert. You saw Mike Stern and a small club. Maybe you can tell me a little bit about that. And why is it New York that you choose as a new living and home place? Because you will not go there alone. You go there with your family, with your wife and your son. And what do you expect to get there, which maybe will be different than being here or in Moscow?
New York. First day, first moment that I remember. First is the tempo of the city. I realized that there is a tempo of the city that I missed from Moscow. The second thing is it was really hard to understand. I realized many things only when I left New York, when I came back to finish my studies. But a few moments that I remember, I was impressed that you can walk in the bar and see somebody playing that is considered as a star in music. For example, like you mentioned, Mike Stern. I was going to visit a jam session at Mesro, but when I saw this blackboard and written Mike Stern, $15 inside, I said, okay, I'm changing my plans. And I visited, and I was listening to him. He was right there on the stage. I was really impressed that it can be a reality. And after that, I was going home, and I wrote a song, because from that special feelings, special emotions, immediately the music idea was born, and the tune, my new tune that is dedicated to this moment, I call it Mike. yeah, a special moment in the life that changes your mind. What else? Why I'm choosing New York to go there? Well, I think as I studied jazz music, there's no other place to go to be involved in jazz music than New York City. And I think inside me I'm trying to challenge myself, because it is not the easiest city to live in, and especially with a family. But I think I decided to challenge myself to go there and try myself there. And I don't know what's gonna happen in 2 or 3 years. Maybe I'll leave, maybe I'll stay. It is really, it's not predictable, let's say. But as Seamus Blake, also one of the teachers that I met in New York, told me, when you live in New York and you are a musician, it is very challenging there, because there are lots of musicians, lots of especially tenor saxophone players, and it's very challenging. But he also told me that it can be inspiring for you. These people can also inspire you to develop and to be better you in future. So I think the main reason is to challenge myself and try myself in some really hard, challenging environment, but also inspirational. What else? I remember my first time when I went to the subway. I saw a woman running and shouting, "He took my wallet!" So somebody stole her wallet, and it was, he later dropped it on the floor, but yeah. Everything that you see in movies about New York, it is there. It is real, actually.
Now you've published your first CD with the title Journey, which is an amazing book, if I can say that. It's telling stories and showing emotions. And you recorded this album also in New York. Please tell me the whole story about this album. Also, you work on your album with Russian musicians. Why this is? Is this coincidence, or did you know them already before? And you also work with 2 very special vocalists, with Hiske Oosterwijk from the Netherlands, and with Evich. Please tell me a little bit about this journey for you.
Journey. The idea of compositions was to tell the story of my journey, how I started in Moscow, my experience in the Netherlands, and my experience in New York, because I was finishing composing in New York already. The CD consists of 3 parts. First part is Moscow, then there is a transition, and then there's Netherlands. Okay, I'm repeating myself. Then transition, and then New York. Transitions I see like a soundtrack for the flight to another place. Every composition that I write, not only on this album, is related to a certain situation or a certain person I'm not writing music just because I like certain harmony or certain melodic hooks or something. First I think about a person or a situation, and then I'm trying to find tools how to express it, so the audience and me, myself and musicians can relate to this situation or particular person. If I go deep in explaining every composition, I think it will take lots of time. I think I'm gonna tell about why I chose these musicians. It all started with Samvel Sarkisyan. I first met him when I was applying to Prins Claus Conservatorium. He was finishing his bachelor's. And I played with him once, and I put a note inside my head that this is a great drummer. And if I have a chance, I'm gonna call him and play with him. Then I was in New York. I had a small amount of time to organize the recording, to find musicians. So immediately Samvel came to my mind. He was already there. And I just asked him, are you playing this week somewhere? And I visited his concert and I saw the rhythm section that he was playing with. And that's how I met Marko Churnetz, the piano player. And that's how I met Berg, the bass player. Then why Hiske? Hiske was studying with me at the same program. So she also visited New York at the same time that I visited. And we're friends. And first time I met her was in Moscow actually. She came with Alex trumpet player, to make a presentation of the album. And later I found out that she also applied at the same program, at the same school. And Mark Evich is a vocalist from Moscow, and I met him before, and I saw that he was pretty active in New York already, because he also moved to New York, and I decided to call him, and it was really, in every situation when I chose a musician was a bit of spontaneity, I'd say, yeah. And I was happy that I called these people. I asked vocalists to write words for the music, so I gave them melody and said, okay, that's the idea of the music, that's the idea of the album, and you're gonna write the words. The CD was recorded in one day. I had only 10 hours and I had 10 songs, so it was pretty intense for me. But I'm really happy with the result. So that's how the album was born.
Well, the whole recording for me, and I listened many times to this album, it's a very powerful recording, and it's a really powerful band as well. Do you need this power also in your life, and why is it important for you to show your audience that you can share this power?
Let me think for a moment. Powerful. I think it's all about the energy of these musicians and the energy of the music, and also emotions that this music triggers. And I think the whole journey, I'm talking about my actual journey, my personal life journey, was and is really emotional. And I think all the musicians reflected really good. And as I said, I'm happy that the result is as it is, powerful and emotional. And I understand that this music is not a background music, I think. It's not really easy to put it as a background and have a dinner, for example. So that's how it is. I cannot say it is really specific, that I try to specifically achieve this result. That's how it happened, and it happened really, let's say, really clean. That's really what I wanted to achieve. The emotional record that can reflect what I felt at that moment, what was my life at that moment. And I think I will be happy to listen to this record 5 years from now and still remember what was the journey for me and my family.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm really happy that the result is...
The titles of your album are all in English. Do you also compose, when you compose, English? Or are you composing in Russian from your Russian heart and translate it into something that sounds English? How is this with you? Where are you in languages today?
When I'm composing about the emotion, let's say, I'm thinking about the emotion, and it doesn't really matter if I think about the name of the song in English or Russian, because basically it will tell the idea on any language. For example, Fever Blues. This song was about the situation when it was, I think, 3 weeks after we had a baby, and my wife had a really high temperature. She had a fever, and it was a crazy time. 3 weeks, small baby. My wife is not sleeping, and I mean, it was kind of rough. And if I name it in English, Fever Blues, or I name it in Russian, Blues Liharadki, let's say, it means the same, exactly. So I'm thinking about how to explain the emotion in the title. But I put the title in English because it can reach more people. And there's basically nothing really special about that.
I read that your music is post-pop jazz. Can you tell me what that is? What this means to you?
I think it's kind of a labeling. I had to put some kind of a label on my music, you know, the genre of the music, so people can recognize what it is. But I cannot say that the music there is a pure post-bop music. It's not like that. I experimented also with kind of beat vibes, funky patterns, and I cannot say it is post-bop, but I think post-bop is prevalent in the city. And the post-bop is what I practiced and played for most of the time that I play music. But I'm trying not to limit myself in genres, because I think it's better when every composer has his own music style. And sometimes it's very easy to put a label. Okay, this is jazz. But jazz is a so wide thing. Every modern music is jazz. And for somebody, jazz is a saxophone, is a smooth jazz, for example. For somebody, jazz is modern hip-hop music, for example. This is jazz. So this kind of labeling is needed to give an idea what is prevalent in music. But if I could, maybe I wouldn't put any style stamp on my music. I like to experiment with styles, and I like to listen to lots of styles of music. Rock music, electronic music, folk music, jazz music, I mean everything. And you can find inspiration in any style or genre or any composer, anything, any sound, nature, for example.
Well, you are a saxophone player. Can you tell me what kind of saxophone you play and how important a mouthpiece is for you? What's the function for you for a mouthpiece? How important is that?
Yeah, first of all, I mainly play tenor saxophone. I also play soprano saxophone, and really rare I play alto saxophone. Tenor saxophone is my favorite. I think I can express everything that I want, the whole range of sounds with my saxophone, with my instrument. And when I cannot find this special sound, I can also go for effects and use some effects. Then I must say that I'm not a big fan of gear discussions. I know some musicians that like to discuss which kind of reeds they use, which kind of mouthpiece they use. Maybe in one moment of my let's say studying phase, I was really deeply interested in which mouthpiece I should choose. And I was, of course, for example, I was trying to copy the sound of Michael Brecker, and I was trying to get as close as I could to get the same gear that he had. It was, of course, very expensive, so I couldn't afford exactly the same gear, but I was trying to be really close to that. But later, I understood that gear can limit you, and that's what happened. I understood that this gear limits me, and I had a chance to visit Ted Clum in New York, Actually, yeah, he's close to New York, in New Jersey. I visited his workshop, and I told him, I want this kind of a comfort, and I want this kind of sound. And after 3 hours, he gave me the mouthpiece. I tried it, and I never thought about gear, about mouthpiece again. It was really comfortable. But I must say that sometimes there are days that you feel uncomfortable and you are trying to search for something new, and you're trying to find more comfortable thing, let's say. The main forgot the word. What I understood finally, gear should help you to achieve the sound you want, and it shouldn't limit you. As soon as it is not limiting you, you are fine, you are good. But yeah, if something is wrong, of course you should find something, but really in most cases the gear should be simple. You shouldn't go for a specific thing. You can just, for example, take the Otlink mouthpiece and sound great on it. A good example is Chris Potter. So
Yeah. Okay. Well, I have a question that is related to when you perform, when you have a concert. Of course, it is possible that you play wrong notes, right? That you make mistakes while you're playing. How do you deal with that?
Keep going. Yeah, I had a problem before. I was really, and I'm still sometimes, I'm afraid to make mistakes. And this limits so much. Yeah. The thing is, mistakes are good. If you are not doing mistakes, you are not growing. That's the other thing that I understood for the last 3 years, maybe. Do mistakes, and you will grow on your mistakes. It is nothing wrong to make mistakes. A good example is my album journey. My first album, I was so nervous because it was my first record. I had such a small amount of time to make the record, small amount of budget to make the record, and of course I was afraid to make mistakes, and I was trying to prepare as much as I could, and finally I made all the mistakes that I could. It's like yeah, from organizing the recording to what I played in solos, for example. And of course, when I was listening to my to rough files, the first thing that came into my mind was, I'm not gonna release this recording. I'm not gonna put it on public, you know. But then my advice to any musician, and for myself also, this is history. Don't be afraid of your mistakes, and do not be confused about your mistakes. We are all human beings, and we do mistakes. We make mistakes, and that's normal. You see it from another angle, you change something next time, and that's how you grow.
Yeah. Okay. Well, my next question is related to compositions. Well, when you compose something, of course, there's a lot of work. You have to put emotion into sound and into structure and the harmonies and everything. But can you tell me what is the biggest satisfaction for you of a composition? The biggest joy?
Okay. When it is finished. Kidding. Let me tell you the process of composing I have. So first, it's really important to put everything on paper, and that's how I do it. Always the best ideas for me. This is my experience, of course. The best ideas come to my mind when I'm not performing, when I'm not practicing, when I'm outside, for example, or I'm doing something that is not related to music directly. And first I take my phone and I'm doing a recording. And it is funny sometimes, yeah, when I'm in public place or in the cafe, I'm doing this one. I'm doing this kind of stuff. It's really, you know, it can be funny. Or for example, when I let my son sleep, I cannot really sing loud and record it because he's already almost asleep, you know. So I'm doing this thing, and then I have hours in my schedule when I take my phone, I take a piece of paper, a pencil, and I put everything on paper. And then there is another time in my schedule when I sit with the piano or maybe with the saxophone, and I'm trying to make something from these sketches. And the biggest joy and satisfaction is when the composition is kind of ready, almost ready, and you have a sketch. And by sketch I mean the melody and harmony and some rhythmic ideas. When you can actually hear what it can sound in a jazz quartet or quintet or any other setting. And the biggest enjoyment is when I'm listening to this sketch, it triggers the emotions that I had when I was doing this thing. That's the biggest satisfaction and enjoyment for me. To clearly translate emotions into music, so it can work the other way. Music to the emotion.
Yeah. Well, next to music, what do you love about your life?
It is a very simple question, and it is very difficult question for me. Recently I realized that the joy of life is to live and try to experience every side of life. The biggest enjoyment and happiness, and the saddest day in your life, and make it as deep as you can. And that's the most purpose of life, is not to look for a specific purpose of life, actually, just to live life and try to make it deep. Try to leave it deep. And yeah, of course, like every person, I enjoy non-material and material things in life, but they are just things and emotions that are supporting you in your journey.
Well,
I hope I answered the question.
yeah. Well, I have another question that is related to sound, and that can be anything, of course. What for you is the most beautiful sound you ever experienced so far?
I cannot name the most beautiful that I experienced. I think for me, any sound that can trigger the deepest emotion is that sound that at the end makes me happy. The sound itself for me is not the sound of the instrument, but any sound that can be found in the world. It can be a sound of the nature. It can be a sound of the silence. It can be a sound of certain moment. I believe that the sound is a physical thing, and I think that comes from my engineering part of life. Any vibration is a sound, and as a musician, I'm happy to put these sounds together and make a piece of music, a piece of art out of these sounds that I can find. It's really hard for me to say something more maybe about that. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much for this beautiful talk with you, and I wish you good luck wherever you go.
Thank you so much for inviting. This interview really helped me to show the inside of my personality, because usually it's not easy for me to just be as much open as I want in the casual conversation. So thank you so much for inviting me, and I was happy to share.
You're very welcome. Thank you too.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think you will become a very good teacher as well.
We'll see. Thank you.
Okay. Wait. Just stay.
All right.
So, how did it go?
Good. Yeah,
Good, huh?
Yeah, great.
You're relaxed?
Great. Yeah, great talk. Yeah.
Very good.
I was relaxed and yeah.
Yeah.
Better than I maybe even expected.
Okay. Yeah. That's always good to hear.
Thank you. You're a very good interviewer.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's a really important thing. You're trying to go deeper than the surface, and that's really appreciated.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, we finished. Great.
You can go.
Nice. All right. How much time did it